Paul wandered between the shelves, running his fingers along the spines of the books, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. Many were written in languages he couldn't comprehend, their titles faded and obscure. A sense of urgency coursed through him. He wanted to learn more about the Count, to uncover the secrets hidden within these pages. In the corner of the room, a large desk was strewn with papers, some yellowed and brittle with age. Paul approached, his heart racing with the thrill of discovery. He sifted through the documents, his eyes widening as he found notes detailing rituals, accounts of the Count's encounters, and warnings about the dangers of blood magic. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the upper levels of the castle, followed by a cacophony of unsettling sounds, a howl, a screech, and then silence. Paul's heart dropped. He quickly made his way back toward the main hall, unease bubbling in his chest. "Anna, Michael," he called out, but his voice was swallowed by the vastness of the castle. The shadows seemed to shift, the air thickening with anticipation. As he stepped back into the main hall, he saw Anna and Michael emerging from the staircase, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" Michael gasped, his breath coming in quick bursts. It sounded like it came from the top floor. "We need to find out," Paul urged, but Anna shook her head, fear etched across her features. "I don't think we should go up there," she said, her voice trembling. "What if it's him? We can't let fear control us," Paul insisted. "We came here for answers. We have to face whatever is up there." With hearts pounding, they ascended the staircase together, each step heavy with dread. The upper level was dimly lit, shadows pooling in every corner. Paul led the way, the weight of their mission pressing down on him. As they reached the landing, they noticed several doors lining the hallway. "Which one should we check first?" Michael asked, looking back and forth between the doors. Before Paul could respond, a chilling breeze swept through the corridor, extinguishing the flickering candlelight. Darkness enveloped them, and they exchanged fearful glances. "Let's try this one," Paul said, pointing to a door at the end of the hallway. He pushed it open slowly, revealing a vast chamber filled with ornate furnishings, though a thick layer of dust suggested it had been untouched for years. As they stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The room was dim, and the air felt heavy with an almost electric charge. In the center stood a grand four-poster bed, its crimson drapes hanging limply. An ornate vanity stood against the wall, reflecting their anxious expressions in its tarnished mirror. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and Paul felt an intense sensation wash over him. It was as if they were being watched. He turned to the others, who stood frozen in place, their eyes fixed on the far corner of the room. "What is it?" Anna asked, her voice barely a whisper. Paul followed her gaze and gasped. In the shadows, a figure emerged, a dark silhouette that loomed larger as it stepped into the dim light. It was a coffin, intricately carved and partially open, revealing rich, dark velvet lining. Before he could react, the lid of the coffin creaked open fully, and within lay the still form of Count Dracula himself, his features serene and lifeless. Paul's breath caught in his throat as he took a hesitant step closer, drawn by a mixture of fear and fascination. "Is he?" Michael began, his voice trembling. Paul knelt beside the coffin, peering into the face of the legendary Count. Dracula's skin was pale, almost ethereal, but the sharp angles of his cheekbones and the slight curl of his lips hinted at an eternal beauty. The air around them felt charged with a strange energy, and Paul reached out instinctively, fingers hovering just above the Count's chest. "What are you doing?" Anna gasped, pulling him back. "You can't touch him." But Paul was mesmerized. "He looks peaceful," he murmured, almost to himself. The stories of Dracula as a bloodthirsty monster felt distant in this moment, replaced by an overwhelming sense of intrigue. Suddenly, the stillness shattered as a loud crash echoed from behind them, sending a jolt through Paul. The doors slammed shut with a resounding thud, trapping them inside the chamber. "Paul!" Anna screamed, panic rising in her voice. "What do we do?" Before Paul could respond, the shadows deepened, swirling around them like a living entity. The temperature dropped further, and he felt a presence, a powerful, sinister force rising from the depths of the castle. "Get away from the coffin!" Michael shouted, pulling Paul back. The hairs on the back of Paul's neck stood on end as he felt the darkness gathering, as if Dracula himself were awakening. With a sudden rush, the coffin began to tremble, and Paul could feel an ancient energy emanating from it, a force that drew him closer. The legends were true. Dracula was stirring from his slumber. "Now!" Michael yelled, grabbing Anna's arm. "We need to get out of here." But as they turned to flee, the door swung open violently, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Dracula had awakened, his presence commanding and terrifying. "Why do you intrude upon my sanctuary?" he intoned, his voice deep and resonant. The air vibrated with his power, and Paul felt a mix of fear and awe wash over him. "We didn't mean any harm," Paul stammered, stepping forward. "We were just curious. We wanted to understand." Dracula's eyes narrowed, and a slow, sinister smile crept across his lips. "Curiosity is a dangerous thing, my young friend. It often leads to one's demise." The castle shook, and shadows flared as Dracula rose from the coffin, his form ethereal yet solid, gliding effortlessly across the room. The temperature plummeted further, and Paul felt an icy grip tightening around his heart. "What do you seek in this forsaken place?" Dracula asked, his voice echoing like a thunderclap in the dim chamber. His gaze pierced through Paul, Anna, and Michael, as though he could see their deepest fears and desires. Paul swallowed hard, the weight of the Count's presence nearly unbearable. "We sought the truth, about you, about the legends," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "We wanted to know if they were real." Dracula's smile widened, revealing a hint of his sharp fangs. "Ah, the truth," he mused, circling them slowly. "Truth and myth are often intertwined. What you seek is far more dangerous than any tale told." Anna, trembling, took a step back, her voice barely steady. "Please, we didn't mean to disturb you." Dracula stopped in front of her, his eyes glowing with an ancient hunger. "Disturb me," he said, his voice dripping with dark amusement. "You trespass upon my domain, stir my slumber, and now you fear my wrath." The tension in the air was suffocating, the darkness seeming to coil around them like a living thing. Michael, sweating despite the chill, glanced nervously at the door. "We need to get out of here," he whispered urgently to Paul. But Dracula heard. "Escape." His voice turned cold, and the shadows around them twisted, blocking the exits. "There is no escape, not without a price." Paul, heart pounding, knew they had ventured too far. The legends were real, and Dracula, the immortal predator, had awakened. Now they were caught in his web, and the only question that remained was whether they could survive the night. The walls of the castle seemed to close in around them, ancient stones vibrating with a sinister energy as Dracula's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Paul's mind raced. Every fiber of his being screamed to run, but there was no way out. The cold grip of terror tightened its hold on him. "What do you want from us?" Paul asked, his voice shaky yet defiant. He hoped there was a way to reason with the vampire lord, some way to appeal to whatever humanity might remain within him. Dracula's eyes flickered with amusement at the question. "What I want is simple," he said, his voice smooth and deadly. "You have disturbed my rest. Now, you must pay with your lives, or serve me for eternity." Anna gasped, clutching onto Michael's arm, her fear palpable. Michael, though equally terrified, tried to step forward, his hand reaching into his jacket, feeling for the silver cross his father had given him years ago, back when they were just stories. "We're not going to serve you," Michael growled, his resolve hardening. "We'll fight you if we have to." Dracula's laughter echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. It was a sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Fight me," he repeated, his voice laced with dark mockery. "Oh, how delightful. I haven't had a good chase in centuries." With a flick of his wrist, the shadows twisted and writhed, taking form, ghastly, half-formed creatures with glowing eyes and elongated claws emerging from the darkness. They moved toward the group with unnatural speed, their presence filling the air with an overwhelming sense of dread. "Run!" Paul yelled, grabbing Anna's hand, and together, the three bolted down the hallway, their footsteps echoing against the cold stone. The creatures followed, their snarls and shrieks filling the air as they pursued with unrelenting speed. They fled through winding corridors and up spiraling staircases, the castle shifting around them as though it were alive, actively thwarting their escape. Michael turned and swung the silver cross at one of the creatures, the sacred relic glowing faintly. The monster recoiled, hissing in pain, but only for a moment. "We can't keep running forever," Anna gasped, her eyes wide with panic. "What are we going to do?" Paul's mind raced. He knew there had to be something in the castle, some weakness or relic that could stop Dracula. Legends always spoke of ways to defeat him. But where could it be? His thoughts went to the highest tower of the castle, where it was said Dracula's ancient enemy had once laid a curse upon the vampire. "We need to get to the tower," Paul said breathlessly. "There has to be something there, some way to stop him." Dracula's voice boomed through the halls as if the castle itself were speaking. "There is no tower high enough, no relic strong enough to defy me. You are mine." But Paul refused to listen. He could feel it deep within him, the will to survive, to fight back against the darkness. Gripping Anna's hand tightly, he led them toward the highest point in the castle. Whatever awaited them there, it had to be their last hope.